All right. Today, Friday, July 19th of 2024, or last week or last month, depending on when you watch this, the largest IT outage in history took place, demonstrating just how vulnerable we all are to the whims of technology and the relatively small mistakes of a very few large corporations. And that's precisely where I'll start for today's purpose. The corporation responsible, which is CrowdStrike. For anyone who doesn't know, and most people probably don't know, I certainly didn't before all of this, CrowdStrike is one of the largest cybersecurity firms in the world. At one point, holding a market cap of nearly $100 billion, the company holds tremendous market share in the cybersecurity space, doing everything from endpoint protection to threat intelligence and even cyber attack response. Their flagship product, called Falcon Platform, integrates very deeply with Microsoft operating systems in order to protect them, which allows the company to catch, mitigate, or prevent outright a great number of cyber attacks, vulnerabilities, and threats. Honestly, it fluctuates if we're talking about company valuation or general market cap, but CrowdStrike is one of, if not the largest, cybersecurity company in the world, with a client list composed of major retailers, banks, airlines, hotels, hospitals, and more. In essence, it serves practically every single major industry. It has thousands of estimated clients, depending on what platform you look at, with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue per quarter, billions per year, and it was even ranked number 4 on Inc.com's best led companies, the list for 2021. Suffice it to say, a cybersecurity behemoth if there ever was one. Well, size certainly does matter, but much like the story, the biblical story of David and Goliath, something very small can bring down a giant. And that's precisely what happened on July 19th, 2024, when CrowdStrike released an update and broke half of the computers on Earth. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration. They didn't serve half of the computers on Earth in a literal sense, but they have enough clients and they broke enough operating systems to dramatically impact people all over the globe in a variety of ways. Quick rundown on what happened. Keep in mind, please, I'm not an expert, but I do know the basics, and this is a rudimentary breakdown of what transpired. At precisely 12:09 a.m. Eastern Time, so right at the start of the day on Friday, CrowdStrike released an over-air software patch for their vulnerability scanner called Falcon Sensor, which is a component of the wider Falcon platform. This update, don't ask me how because I have no idea whatsoever, didn't just break its own software, which wouldn't have been all that bad, comparatively speaking. No, no, no. It also disrupted whatever Windows device it was installed on, preventing the system from even properly booting, because it sits in the computer's critical pathway. Once this update went through, the computer would get what's called a BSOD, BSOD, or blue screen of death error, which locked it in a cycle of never being able to properly start at all, thereby taking enormous chunks of the world economy offline because someone at CrowdStrike didn't feel like properly testing a security update. That's bad. Like, really, 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 really bad, affecting millions, possibly billions of machines. But it gets so much worse because the nature of the problem made it such that solutions couldn't even be deployed the same way. See, if the computer can't even boot up, how can the company undo the damage that they caused? And since the issue was affecting everything from medical facilities to financial institutions, how would people go about fixing this? Thankfully, there was a way to fix it. There is a way, rather, as of the making of this video, the damage is still being actively undone, where devices could be booted up in safe mode and a particular system file deleted, which would then stop the blue screen of death cycle. But this fix was required to be carried out locally on every single different machine affected, which is a devastating blow to commercial businesses worldwide. Just to put this in perspective here, data from FlightAware indicates that Friday the 19th had over 42,000 planes delayed, with 4,500 outright canceled. The real-time map they provide of on-time versus delayed travel instances is fully skewed in the negative, even now, especially in Atlanta, Denver, and Charlotte. But that's just one industry affected in a world where CrowdStrike serves pretty much everyone. One thing that jumps out at me here is that hospitals were disproportionately affected alongside banks, which resulted in operating rooms being closed, non-emergency surgeries and other procedures being actively canceled, and delays in general healthcare that absolutely do have downstream consequences and may result in fatalities that otherwise would not have happened. If you want something much more immediate as an example, 911 emergency service centers went down, at least some of them, with others resorting to pen and paper or switching to alternate facilities to help ease the overload, for roughly 7 continuous hours, where many calls went completely unanswered. That's terrifying to think about when the cause is a software patch for a vulnerability scanner in the antivirus, the thing that's supposed to protect you. Every single commercial sector was impacted by this: finance, logistics, government, retail, and the issue is by far the largest IT screw up in human history, with an untold dollar value of damage in its wake. But far beyond that dollar value is the wake up call it provides, which is hopefully being heard far and wide right now by any company affected, as well as politicians and lawmakers who are responsible for proactively regulating these types of things. The reliance that we have, consolidated reliance that is, on hyperfragile systems with zero redundancy is completely off the rails. A simple over air software patch from one company can break the functionality of the world economy. And sure, thankfully, this particular problem is fixable, albeit slowly and painfully. But imagine a similar situation where the issue had no safe mode redo button. Imagine the consequences if this issue, or a similar one, where caused the computers to be bricked completely. And let's just pause for a second collectively and think about how close we are every single waking day to a world where we suddenly can't really pay for things because Visa is a client of CrowdStrike. Imagine if suddenly air travel control systems were just bricked, resulting in a world where we don't have commercial air travel anymore for a while. It would strand people all over the world, and it would completely redefine shipping, as well as a whole host of other problems, which are too numerous to even list right now. Because the truth here is that we rely on complicated computer systems, vulnerable infrastructure, if you will, that's hyper concentrated through a handful of companies that have unbelievable influence over our daily lives. Dependence on technology is completely expected, to be completely honest here. When you discover new things that make logistics or accounting more efficient, obviously those practices and technologies become completely widespread. But the CrowdStrike IT failure of July 19th, 2024 is a tiny little flavor taste of how easily society can quite literally collapse around us. It didn't actually happen, thank God, and the issues that spawned from it are mostly measured in the form of a dollar value to the tune of billions. But the disaster underscores a legitimate, very real, very active threat that our lackadaisical attitude towards system resilience is a pathway of destruction. One more very obvious way to explain this would be trucking. Domestic shipments are almost all delivered by truck. International shipments, imports that is, are delivered by truck as well. They just route to and from major ports after they get delivered by ship, like the Port of Los Angeles, which is the country's largest port as well. But when I say that CrowdStrike was just a taste, I very much mean it. According to the US Department of Transportation, over 70% of all of our food and fuel is delivered by truck. But trucks are typically governed by dispatching, logistics, and communication software from a company called Qualcomm. Yeah, Qualcomm is a client of CrowdStrike. Quote from their website, "We're constantly collaborating with major brands to enhance all parts of the Windows on Snapdragon ecosystem. At MWC 2022, we announced the expansion of our Snapdragon compute ecosystem for next-generation enterprise-grade PCs. This includes collaborating with the top 100 Windows ISVs to optimize their applications, including Zoom and CrowdStrike." End quote. Well, if you go on over to the r/truckers subreddit, which is anecdotal, I know, but it's also pretty specific. There's a lot of examples, and it's not something I see a lot of motivation to lie about here. If you go browse that subreddit, there are multiple examples of truckers saying things like, "Yeah, I'm at a place that says they can't load/unload trucks until they fix the problem," particularly talking about CrowdStrike and this recent IT outage. Of course, trucks physically can be unloaded during an outage of Qualcomm, but the sheer volume of product that ships domestically through trucking services cannot be logged, handled, or continued if computer software goes offline for more than a very, very short time frame, leaving us with a chilling example of just how integrated a product like CrowdStrike Falcon really is, and just how terrifying it can be if computer systems go offline. I don't know if people got the message there, so I'll just say it outright. If trucking infrastructure went down completely, within 24 hours, shipping would completely cease. Within 2 to 3 days, that's 48 to 72 hours, food shortages would become a very serious issue, as would fuel. And within 1 calendar month, right, 30-ish days, the country would collapse as a result of clean water, food, fuel, and medical supplies being inaccessible to pretty much everyone. Efforts would obviously be undertaken to stave off these catastrophes. It's a very, very extreme example, to be sure. But when millions of computers get temporarily bricked because one cybersecurity company pushed out a simple automatic software update affecting these very same industries and bringing them to a short-lived halt, right? Just as a demonstration. Well, let's just say I hope this drives a lot of companies to reevaluate their hyper reliance on complex computer systems in this way, where the antivirus can shut down the entire operation with a single patch. Regardless, July 19th of 2024 was the single largest IT failure the world has ever seen, and thankfully the negative ramifications are relatively minor compared to what they could have been, while also being incredibly major with damage amounting to billions of dollars. And honestly, hopefully it teaches all of us a much needed lesson. That's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. Patreon and Locals, monthly memberships, much appreciated. Also a special VPN discount, which is funny that I'm advertising a computer VPN after a subject like this, but it is what it is. And more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, of course, especially in today's day and age. And have a nice night.